Welcome to Nature-Centered Design course. Now, imagine creating and transforming spaces where nature, indigenous culture, and architecture blend seamlessly. My name is Wangoi Mwangi. Are you passionate about creating cities, buildings, and spaces that reflect your culture and incorporate your native natural ecosystem? Nature-centered design is created for everyone, from professionals, that is built environment professionals, architects, interior designers, to homeowners, to traditional architecture enthusiasts, biophilic design enthusiasts. It's all catered to you. A city that can show who you are through design and blends harmoniously with the natural world. Join in, where we'll be fusing biophilia, indigenous knowledge, and climate action. Hello everyone, my name is Wangoi Mwangi, and today I'm on set with a very interesting guest who is going to be part of our interview. Today we'll be talking about traditional African architecture, culture-centered design, and it's going to be exciting. So let me introduce my guest, Mr. Roy. Actually, let me leave him to introduce himself.
Thank you for throwing me into the deep end. So my name is Roy Githaiga. I am I'd like to call myself a learner of the culture-centered design and vernacularism type of, part of architecture. I did study architecture both in Kenya and outside. I am a lover of culture. I am a lover of anything that brings, culture and nature together with the built environment. So I do research the built environment quite a lot as well. I'm also a board member of the Kenya Green Building Society. I am the director of my own firm, that's Muda Design, which generally looks at sustainable building practices. And that's essentially through all the projects that I do as well. So I guess we'll get to know who I am as we move along, because the introduction can go pretty long. Depending on especially depending on different topics and different things, because I've dabbled in quite a lot of things. So we can talk about art. I've dabbled in art. We can talk about music. I've dabbled in music, just a little bit. But yeah.
Oh, wow, music as well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
History.
So what got you? What made you decide I want to do architecture? Of course, this is from a young age. Like, what propelled you towards design or art or architecture?
So that's actually now kind of coming back to what I said earlier with art. So from a young age, I've always loved drawing. And this is something that I realized that I'm very good at a very young age. And it's something that I think directly or indirectly my parents also saw it. But architecture was something that I never really thought about until I was in high school. And this is coming from a point of I have two uncles of mine who, one is a construction manager, and the other, actually both of them are construction managers, and quantity surveyors, and I think the other one, so they're all in the industry. They've all designed homes and they've constructed buildings. Actually, the house that I grew up in as a kid was designed and built by two of my uncles, my father's brothers. So
where this is coming from.
so you can say maybe it's something that I've picked up moving along, but I really didn't think about architecture until I was in high school. And that was through, I did a work placement program when I was doing my O-levels. And it was fascinating. I just fell in love with it. I wasn't pushed to it. I wasn't pushed to do it. It was just something that we had to do when I was in high school, and I just fell in love with architecture from that day.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think in this time and age, it's really beautiful for someone to love what they're doing. Just as we were speaking earlier, like getting passion these days is very rare.
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful that you're in a space that you actually do love. And So, when it comes to culture-centered design or vernacular architecture, is that also something that came along with you in high school, or is it after you started doing architecture, or where did that specific arm of who you are come from?
I always say this. Architecture for me, at the very beginning, was standard. So knowing things about sustainability or cultures and design, vernacularism, all that came later in my life. And this is after I've done maybe 6-7 years of experience in architecture as well. So I would say this, I had to leave my comfort zone for me to experience something different. And that different thing that I experienced was different cultures. So by experiencing the general Kenyan culture or lack thereof, I would say lack thereof, and I'll come to the reason why I'm saying that, in the built environment. When I left the country, I went to study. I studied in Malaysia and Australia. I saw a different embodiment of culture in architecture. So that is something that I started to understand and started to see that it's actually possible to do something like this. Why are we not doing this in Kenya?
Yeah.
Or why are we not intentionally doing it? I think some things are being done, but very unintentionally. It's and I could say a lot of things are being done that seem good are very unintentional. But you'll also find that some people who are being very intentional with what they do. So, and it goes back to the basics of architecture, understanding how the natural environment works. But I feel like that is something that is lost through the need for money a lot of the time. But that's a whole other topic. So how I started looking at culture-centered design generally was from experiencing different cultures or being embedded in different cultures from people from all over the world. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so when we talk about culture-centered design, what exactly is culture-centered design for someone who is listening to this for the first time?
It's basically what I was talking about earlier. So it's a method of, so culture-centered design, yeah, it's a method of understanding what your direct context needs. So whether it's people-centered or environmentally centered or just how the buildings in the area look, or, it's culture-centered design goes deeper than just doing a building and then looking at your neighbor, what your neighbor's done.
Yeah.
I think it's more, and this is how I describe it, it's more relatable with the direct context when it comes to a people-centered and a natural environmental state of mind. So say if I'm building something in the coast, and you've gone to the coast, we've all gone to the coast, and we see the Swahili type of houses that are done there. There's an origin for Swahili homes that comes from that stems from Arabic architecture and all that. But then you cannot build. It's very hard. Okay, it's not hard and it's not impossible to build a Swahili house anywhere else in Kenya. It's just that it does not meet the. It doesn't fit in. And it's an environmental thing as well. There's a reason why Swahili homes are done the way they are done, because they're relating themselves to the direct context they're in. But take that now, a house that is being done in, let's say, Nanyuki or whatnot.
Yeah.
Then take that same design and take that same look and feel. If that has been designed for that environment and then move it to the coast, it doesn't work. So it's all about the context, and also there's a relation now with the people. And now this is where the culture comes in. So the culture itself is embedded through the different systems that take place into how and we're generally just talking about architecture here, but how people live, work, and play. And that in itself, by understanding how these people do those things, can really influence how you design buildings for them. Yeah.
Okay. So there's something that I've been coming across a lot, also in my journey of trying to understand sustainability, culture, and I have seen the word vernacular, I have seen the word traditional.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is there a difference between the two words, and what is the difference because I see people using them interchangeably.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between the two words?
I'll start by saying this. When you read vernacular, think of how our forefathers built their traditional homes. And I understand there's a part where vernacularism and traditional do interchange because there's a very big similarity, but then the differences also are very vast. So vernacular, and I'll put it this way, think of the mud huts, think of the adobe houses, think of, using local materials, using, materials that are locally available and are centered around the people where that building is done. So remember we talked about context earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is that context. The context for vernacularism or vernacular architecture is the direct environment that building sits in. Traditional, however, can be from anywhere. So think of museums of Kenya, think of the State House in Kenya, think of the White House in the US, think of all the museums in Kenya actually. You'll find there are a couple of old, like in Old Town, there are a couple of old buildings that for Jesus is more like a traditional sense because it is a vernacular system to a point, but it is not the vernacular system for that area. So it's a traditional building technique, whether it's techniques, whether it's materials, whether it's what, but from another area that has now influenced how we do things locally, but over a generation. So that's why it's called traditional, because of the time, right? So it's only traditional because it's spanned over a specific, over a very long period of time. But vernacular is timeless. So vernacular, you can actually say it's pretty timeless, but traditional has to, it starts where vernacular kind of tries to stop, I guess, because there's a system that was now picked up. Like in Kenya, because of the influence of colonialism, we have systems and ways we do our buildings that came from that knowledge. Yeah. Vernacularism as well is very informal. So it's an informal type of understanding of how buildings are done, or even systems are done, sustainable systems are done. So that's why I call it slightly informal. Okay. That's through inherent knowledge from your forefathers and whatnot. You tell your grandchild tells their grandchild, like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to make it simpler, there's a place called Olepolis.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been there. It is a place.
I lived 5-6 kilometers. I grew up 6 kilometers away from Olepolis.
Oh wow. Okay. So the last time I was at Olepolis, I saw some mud huts, not mud huts, some manyatas. So they kind of like made the old manyata into something modern. They've painted it very nicely. It's still the same shape of a manyata, but there's windows, like when you get in, the beds kind of look modern, but the building, the structure is still the manyata shape. It's still with the mud, but then they've used cement on top. Will you say that's a traditional, would you call that modern traditional architecture or modern vernacular architecture, to make it relatable to the viewer?
It's modern vernacular architecture. Because you're using something that was a system that was done by our forefathers. Right? I don't think there's any architect or architecture school that teaches us how to design huts.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's none. But our forefathers created a system where they know how to build the walls of a hut because maybe their grandmothers showed them, and their great grandmothers showed them like how to do this type of structures. And there's a reason why I'm actually pegging on the great grandmothers and the grandmothers and the mothers and the likes, because it's the women who generally used to build their houses, right? So sorry to cut you short. Don't you think that's weird?
Why should we be building houses?
Because traditionally or historically men were out in war.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So if you put it in that context, the men were either hunters and gatherers, or they were out fighting the wars, or they were out doing this and that and that. So the people who were left to tend for the homes were the women and the children. So the women generally built the homes. they learned how to do the systems. They were not shown. They just it's something that it's a communal thing, and you'll find that there are different links to women building houses internationally from an indigenous point of view. So it's not an African thing only. It's an indigenous. It's a global indigenous system. Yeah, because the men were always out to war.
Okay, in the modern current times, my God, I will definitely not be building a house. But
but you are in the industry, so I mean.
Oh yeah, I'm in the industry.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
I don't know. When I think about it, from then the women were actually physically doing the work themselves.
Yeah.
Right now I'm directing, you know. But I also see in the modern construction, like I'll find women also painting, and I actually I vouch for that. I like the fact that people can get to practice what they love, and it doesn't need to be based on a gender basis. Okay, for me preferentially, I don't think I'd want to be painting the walls by myself. I now get it clearly what you mean by vernacular and traditional, and I'm curious, what does cultured centered design mean to you personally as Roy?
Oh, do we have enough time? Let me try and simplify it. Over the past, maybe let's say 6 to 10 years, through the my exposure to different communities around the world, I told you I lived in Malaysia, I've lived in Australia, but I've also traveled into Europe and some parts of Southeast Asia. It's funny that I still haven't traveled some of Africa as well, which I really want to do.
Oh my God.
But what that gave me is an understanding of how different cultures do things to better their livelihoods. So it's either how they build their houses, the food that they eat, and the understanding. So there's an inherent type of knowledge that culture normally gives.
Yeah.
And that is something that I found very profound. It's very hard to teach culture-centered design because what is the context?
Oh, yeah.
So your context for culture-centered design has to be very direct, but also very simplified, because it's also one of those topics that you can just jump into and get into a rabbit hole, because it'll open up different avenues, right?
Yeah.
Into spirituality, into nature, into
Yes.
so much more. But to me, culture-centered design, it describes the livelihood, or if I could put it better, the existence of humanity within the different systems that we're trying to build. So whether it's in the built environment, the natural environment, education systems, even in tech, whatever it is, however small or however big you're trying to do things, if it is directly affecting how people of a certain community live, do, work, understand things, if you're changing their understanding as opposed to understanding them first before you make any changes, that is, you're kind of going backwards. But then you have to understand how people live, how people do their things, how people work, right?
Yeah.
So that when you're coming to give opinions, because everyone does have an opinion, when you're coming to give your opinion on how something needs to be done for that specific area, it has to come from
to them.
Yeah, because it's coming from an informed point of view. So you're directly involving yourself in people's livelihoods. Yeah.
Wow, and I think if we will get to do that with every phase of our lives, like as you're mentioning, tech, medicine, etc., the way the Kikuyus, a tribe in Kenya, did their thing versus the way, let's say, the Luyas or the coastal people did their things is very different.
Yeah.
If there was something that explains to me that, this was used in your culture because of this and this, it will give me a very different perspective towards it.
Yeah.
If that was used in architecture, as you're doing it, like the Kikuyus or the Kambas or whoever, they built the buildings like this because culturally it meant this. I think we'll be more open to actually wanting to have our houses resemble our culture because we realize, oh my God, there's quite a beautiful meaning towards it.
Yeah, and I think one of the major things that actually needs to be done when you're talking about culture-centered design is education.
Yeah.
I said it's very hard to teach culture-centered design, but it's not impossible. right? And the benefit for actually teaching culture-centered design is not to grown-ups or practitioners. It's best to teach young kids.
Wow, I'm loving the conversation. So we talked about the Manyatas and Kikuyu and Adobe, and we've mentioned quite a number of words. And I'm curious, what African traditional building techniques would you say you find interesting or innovative? And how have they influenced your work right now?
Yeah. It's actually one system that I've used in almost every building that I've designed or home that I've designed in the past, say, 4 or 5 years. And that's courtyards.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me explain this. So, and where my love for courtyards came from. While I was doing my master's thesis, I was in the stage of comparing different cultures because so my thesis was around developing a school for kids, right?
In Kenya or outside?
So it was I did it when I was outside, but it was my site was in Kibera actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And one of the things that I looked at,
Sorry, for context, Kibera is
it's one of the biggest informal urban settlements in the world. I think it's the biggest in Africa. Yeah. So what I did was I selected an existing school zone and I started designing for that space. So understanding the different cultures that live in that space. And for like Kibera, I learned that there are 3 different cultures that live predominantly around where the school was. Remember when I started talking about context?
Yeah.
So where culture-centered design comes in is, and vernacularism is around that context of the specific place.
Yeah.
So the Kikuyu people, the Luos, and the Nubian community.
Nubian?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there's a traditional reason, or a historical reason, let me use the word historical to be precise, why the Nubians are in Kenya and mostly in Kibera. You can tie it back to colonialism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same reason why the Indians are in Parklands and Westlands. It's around the same time.
Ooh,
Yeah.
This is definitely a bigger conversation.
But we can get deeper into that later. So when I was looking at the different categories of how people did the 3 different cultures did their homes or built their systems, right? It was around the understanding of how they function. So the Kikuyu had their own functions, the Luos had their own functions, and the Nubians also had their own functions. But in that comparison, so I had a table that I put that comparison list in there. The courtyards came out as a thing. It's a common theme. So within the traditional, within the historical ways that the Luos actually built their homes back in the day as their own boma, there was a courtyard.
Okay.
The Kikuyu also had the same thing, but then the Kikuyus would either call it a garden or something of the sort. But there was also a rendezvous point of all the different huts within that boma where they would all congregate, right? The Nubians had the same thing as well. So the Nubians had different typologies depending on the size of the home and likes, but at the very center was an open courtyard. So when I looked at that, I was like, I started to start wondering why courtyard system is. So I went deeper into the research of a courtyard or an atrium, in whether it's a smaller house, you have an atrium and the likes. But it's to control the natural environment of the houses.
Oh.
So for Nubian architecture, what they did was, and this is more of their vernacular type of building methodology, they still used either adobe or bricks or whatever it is, but they still had a courtyard. So the courtyard was to regulate internal temperature.
And how does that happen?
Well, wind generally doesn't move in just one straight direction, right?
Yeah.
So you have predominant wind directions and the likes, prevailing wind directions rather. But what that does, you have a section of the house which is higher than the other, so it breaks the wind. So if you have a courtyard, that wind actually circulates within the courtyard.
Yeah.
If you have windows, the wind that goes through the windows actually gets through the courtyard. So if it's in the summer, it's very hot, the courtyard acts as a funnel for all the air to be funneled out of the houses. Or it could be used to circulate cooler air in the evenings or during the day when when it's really hot inside. So people would actually come and sit around the courtyard, and they would have more natural, more natural air, because there's one part of the house that is higher than the other, so it's capturing some of that air and it's circulating it inward. So by doing so, the understanding of how also the Kikuyus used that, and the Luos actually, both of them, used that space as a congregation space. I designed the school in Kibera with a courtyard as the playground, because after class or after lunch, in the washrooms, they all meet in the courtyard to play. It also had another significance where the school itself, when the school is closed, the school could be used as a community gathering space. So if you have a community gathering area, where would they gather? It's not in the classrooms, it's in the courtyard. So it brings the kids in there, but it also brings the community in there as well. So all the houses that I've actually designed, whether it's a small sketch, whether it's a house that I'm building right now, it has a courtyard of sorts, or an atrium of sorts, that actually helps funnel that air out, or bringing that light in as well. So there's those two functions of light and also natural air.
This is very interesting, because I've realized it's all over, not just in Kenya. Like when you read Nigerian architecture, the Asante, everybody had a courtyard, but I never really got into why, because I thought it was just about the community aspect. But then, of course, now for you, there's a more technical point to it, which is very fascinating.
And when you go back and start researching these different communities, and I said earlier that there's a connection chain within indigenous communities all over the world. You'll find that they were very technical in their mind as well. So it was not just something that they did because it looked good, they did it because it also functioned well. And that's why it's been repeated over and over again, because it's something that actually works. So actually what I'm doing, or what people are doing, we're not reinventing the wheel.
It's nothing new.
It's nothing new. It's just bringing it back into the built environment to make people understand there's a reason why a courtyard makes sense. Why not connect yourself to your garden? Why not have big windows or big sliding doors or whatever, so that you can connect yourself to the outside? Or even within your structure, why not have something in the center that actually brings people in? But
I have a question. In the modern context, in our urban areas, in our offices, I do see atriums, but they're so cold. Like in the big, humongous skyscrapers, yes, there's an atrium. Do they really function? Do they have the same function as the courtyard then, of the circulation of air? Or is it just, I don't know, do they really serve a technical purpose? Because they're very cold, you don't want to go there, you don't want to meet your friends there because the sun is not coming, because there's some polycarbonate sheets above. What do you feel about the modern atriums that we are designing?
Well, I have a weird take on this. There's positives and negatives to it. Basics in architecture is environmental understanding. So the sun path, the prevailing wind direction, all that is basic. That's year one stuff, right? But people forget that. Orientation of buildings, people forget that. So if I built my building or skyscraper with an atrium that does not look at, or where the openings are, most of the openings are into the atrium, have nothing to do with the prevailing wind direction, I've already lost the plot. You see what I mean? So then it brings the question of why actually have that space. It's a beautiful space to have because it floods in a lot of light. It may be cold during winter times or cold seasons, but when it's hot inside the offices, that's the place you want to be. Because the function, it's like a chimney stack, right? There's a reason why smoke actually goes up the chimney, and there's a technical design to it, right? It's all about pressure, air pressure and things, and we can go into that technicality later. But when wind comes in, maybe from the main doors or from windows opened here and there, blah, blah, and they capture the atrium, what that does is that even the walls that are surrounding the atrium, which also now embody the offices inside, they're cooled down. So it does serve a purpose when done well.
And in terms of, okay, I get the courtyard is like your signature technique.
Yes, to a point. It's my favorite. It's my favorite technique. Yeah.
But I'm sure there are other techniques you can mention, just in passing, that probably is common in African architecture. That maybe you can just highlight.
Yeah. So there's one that is actually that I'd really love to get into. Maybe in a future project. Fingers crossed. Is it's called it has an Arabic history to it. It's I think the word escapes me. I think it's masharbia.
Mashirbia. Oh, I love mashirbia.
So it's all about creating shadows and playing with light and shadows, but it's very good and it's very big in the coastal region, right? And it can be used anywhere. Right.
But does it? But back to context. If I use mashirbia in Nairobi, I always feel like it feels so coastal that I can't use it in Nairobi.
But there are different designs for mashirbia as well. So so what you do instead of using the same materials or the same designs, come up with something that actually does the same thing, but it is not using the same patterns. So like using bricks, you have perforated brick walls. It's the same thing, right? So a perforated brick wall is actually another form of mashirbia pattern. So that is if it has the mashirbia shape and whatnot. But even if you're just using the same rectangular bricks and it gives the same effect or the same kind of it gives homage to the old way of doing things, but you've modernized it to a different area. So there's a home that I've actually designed, but it hasn't been built, that has the perforated brick walls.
Oh, lovely. I think we need to visit some of your projects and help the viewers to understand this more.
It's not been built yet, but
okay.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, interesting. Now, something about Africans and architecture. The architecture was very natural. The material, the location, everything was in tune with nature. And I, as Wangoi, I'm a Biophilia content creator, Biophilic interior designer. I do a lot of content creation on this. And I'm just curious, what is your interaction with Biophilia? What is your understanding of Biophilia? And do you feel that Biophilia and Biophilic design can actually help culture-centered design grow?
Yes and yes. I think it can be overlooked to a point, Biophilic design, the same way interior design was overlooked for a very long period of time in relation to architecture. But Biophilic design, because it's a nature-based design system, it's very important for us to actually start using these different design styles, right? And it's not just about using one design style and running with it. It's about integrating different design styles. So I talked about atriums and courtyards. Atriums and courtyards are the perfect place to actually bring in a lot of this Biophilic design. As much as some of it may be artificial to a point where you had to have planted these plants in that specific area, blah, 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 whatever it is, it's still a form of Biophilic design. Then there's also the arm of, if I have a specific site, like where we are right now, if it's very natural, it's very serene, and my client asks me, I have this small piece of land here, it's maybe 50 by 20, blah, 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 blah. I just want a cozy house. I'm not going to cut down these trees. I'm going to preserve as much of the natural environment as I can, because now that brings in that natural sense of I have maintained the natural environment, and how I design the house has to have a direct relation to its immediate context and the immediate environment. So if it has a courtyard, well and good. But if it doesn't, it has big windows, big doors. You have outside sitting areas. How that person lives and works and operates in that house has to be relatable with the natural environment around him or her.
Looking at where we've come from, as, let me say, Africans, or how our grandmothers built, and where we are today, of course, there's a huge disparity. Even the way we incorporated Biophilic design, maybe in the selection of the sites, in the creation of the buildings, in the use of natural materials, there has been a lot of of change, yeah? And there's a lot of external influences on how we build. So what would you say are some of these external influences, and what is their impact on our architecture right now? Are there positives? Of course there are. Are there negatives? Do they outweigh? What would you say are the external influences affecting our architecture, our current architecture, and my God, what can we do about this?
I think everyone in the industry has a different perspective of this. And it generally stems from how they practice, or what they do, or what they're interested in. So I would say, personally, there is a very big influence in how buildings are done in Kenya and in Africa that are influenced outside Africa, right? And it's a very big percentage of that. Even when you start talking about sustainability, you'll find people talking about solar panels, you'll find people talking about water recyclable systems, you have triple glazing, double glazing, all these technical systems and whatnot, AC, air conditioning units and all that. They do make sense to a certain degree. But also to a certain degree, because of context, they may not. So if I had a house here, I wouldn't put an AC system. I would probably put solar because I need to get off the grid, right? But there are different systems that you can actually put in place for architecture to find, as much as it's influenced by, and I would say this maybe the West or the East, is that some of these systems are good for Africa, but some of them are just copy-paste. I was in a webinar a while back, and it was pegged around sustainability, and I was fascinated by one person from Germany who said that it is very wrong for the countries and the regions of the West and the East to try and teach Africans on sustainability, yet sustainability started from Africa.
I 100% agree.
Or rather, let me put it this way, Africa is very rich in sustainable systems, right? Because every other region had its own sustainable system, right? So, yeah, so let's cancel that it starts from Africa, but every region has its own inherent sustainability. But you cannot peg one area, one whole region, on the mindset, or because this is all pegged on whether it's marketing or money, you cannot peg a whole community or a whole region telling them that this is how you're supposed to build because this and this and this and this, and this is someone who's not lived in your environment. So unfortunately what that does is that it wipes out your culture, it wipes out your heritage. It's like whitewashing who you are.
Exactly.
And it's not right to a larger degree. It's not right for these influences to overshadow what we are naturally, right? And unfortunately that happens quite a lot. And you'll see the buildings that are there in Nairobi right now. I can tell you almost maybe 60-70% of the new buildings that have come up are heavily influenced by what is happening in the West. Yeah?
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a shame, to a certain degree. It's a bit of a shame that is happening. But I know architects who are doing amazing jobs at changing the interiors of certain spaces. Because you might find the exterior space has been done, but the interior spaces, people are doing amazing jobs. Trying to bring back that culture sense, bring back the heritage sense into spaces is very important. And that's why retrofit now works.
Yeah.
Now that's where retrofit kind of comes in and plays into this, because if the structure's already been built, there's demolishing that as it is already, you're now ruining the environment as well by doing that. So instead of demolishing, let's retrofit. So I would say there's a good and there's a bad. The bad is the overshadowing. The good is that there are now still people right now who are now changing how things are done.
And I feel like the bad is also a huge contributor to climate change, from buildings.
Yeah, and that's been happening for, we all know the statistics, the numbers that fly around. We've all heard them. The problem is, if we keep copying, and I would say this is a control V, control C type of situation. So we're copying how buildings are being done elsewhere and we're just bringing them into the country. If we keep doing that, we're ruining our environment, right? And people may come with all these things, oh, they're triple glazed windows, they're this and this and this. But then they're triple glazed and then you're using AC systems.
Yes.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So it's, there has to be a line that we have to put, especially in our building code. And it's fascinating that we are talking about this now because the building code has just been released, the 2024 building code, which gives us a whole year to review and see what we can do with it. But yeah, I mean, it's just something that we need to start. We need to be very intentional about what we're doing for our environment. Yeah.
And I think part of the conversation that we're having today is also bringing light, because you'll find that most of the lay people, or rather the homeowners, think that the glazed windows is sustainability, think that the AC, you know. I feel like the conversation that we're having right now is bringing more light to the architects that you're saying who are doing amazing work, but we don't have more of these conversations. So this is a start to actually, you know, kind of helping people understand that whatever you're doing is actually not really helping the environment. It's just a copy and a paste, and it's becoming more of a disaster in some areas. Of course, the benefits some places, but yeah, I think we need to have more of these conversations.
I made a joke with a friend of mine a while back, and we were just talking about the same type of thing, and we're like, we need architecture police. we really need people who are going to police the built environment, because I don't think the county councils are going to do the work for us. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But is it really helping? Some could say yes, some could say no. But I feel like we need a privatized police, architectural police system that goes and says, nah, this should not be done. This will not. This is wrong. This is bad. This is this.
Yes.
We need to change the status quo of how we do things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah.
Looking at our architecture right now, and what we've been speaking about earlier, and we've mentioned a lot of culture, a lot of nature integration, and a lot of indigenous knowledge, you know, that was, I think, inherently in us, because unless we were taught by God, sometimes I wonder how we knew how to build the way we built, or how to do the courtyards. Of course, it was passed down, but I feel that it's almost inherent in us. But I wonder, in the way we build nowadays, even when you look at rural areas, do you think we are using more of natural materials to build? Do you think there's a balance between the natural materials or the local materials compared to our imported materials? And do you think that the integration of culture, or rather, do you think our cultures are influencing right now the kind of materials we're using in building?
Well, that's a very good question, cause, and I think I'll go in maybe 2 or 3 directions on this. Yeah. So when we're talking about local materials, or the influence on local materials, especially in the peri-urban and rural areas, the biggest thing that I've seen is, and we can actually say, we can actually, you know, give reverence to the fact that we don't import a lot of our structural materials. And that I mean with the stone, the bricks, and all those things. We manufacture them here, or they are quarried here, right? But there's an imbalance. There's a form of imbalance when it comes to some of these imported materials, because it's removing from the local industrial, I guess I could put the industries that would produce these materials locally, because you find them coming from China, they're coming from this, and they're brought in huge freights, which their price is cheaper than what could be made here. So it's kind of a competition. That's a question on competition and what makes sense on that fact. But also because it's produced elsewhere, we can't really monitor the production of those materials. So you'll find that when they're producing the materials and the transportation of these materials into the country, it's creating negative environmental effects globally. In Kenya, I would say this, in most of Africa, we still build with our local materials. And I'll go deeper when I'm talking about local. I mean local within the Kenyan
environment.
and the borders of Kenya, right? But then you also have to consider localized materials. So there's in terms of local that is found in Kenya, but there's local that you have to now, depending on your context, where's that material coming from?
Yeah.
So that also answers your question on culture, whether we are really pushing for, or we are really heading in the direction that culture is being represented. And I would say no, it's not being represented, because localized materials for that specific context are not heavily used. So you'll find the best place to find certain stone is XY. A place to find the best type of, I don't know, sand is XY, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
But you don't use what is locally available to you in your immediate perimeter. You see what I mean? So that in itself, it's like we are kind of doing okay by the fact that a lot of our structural materials are Kenyan based, but we're doing ourselves a disservice on a localized perspective by not utilizing our immediate environment in our construction. Yeah, so I don't know whether you understand what I mean by that.
Yeah, I get
imbalance.
what you mean. And why do you think what do you think is the reason behind that? Is it that I want my house to look like someone else's house, so I use the materials they use? Or is it that I'm not aware that the immediate materials around me can actually be used? What do you think is the missing link there?
So you remember when we talked about earlier the difference between vernacular and traditional, right? So vernacular is within the context. Traditional is a style. So it's a style that is influenced over time, but from somewhere else. So in Kenya, we have we are very heavy on a traditional sense of building. Because right now, if you ask anyone to build with bricks or sticks or whatever, they'll say that's a very old way of building. It's not stable. It's not beautiful. It's not this. But who determines the beauty or the aesthetics of a specific build, if not the community itself, right? So if a community's mindset has been put in a certain position over a long period of time, because they've been influenced by people or by other cultures coming from outside and saying that this is how you're supposed to build houses now, then that is what is dimming our how we build.
So,
right?
so in short, you're saying that we're dealing with a problem of mindsets.
Yeah, it's a mindset issue, because think about it this way: all the old buildings, and I would even go into like the Roman type of architecture, right? They use the heavy stones that we are using in Kenya now, right? Maybe to a smaller scale that we're using now, but the model of construction is the same. It's brick and mortar, right? Now that brick and mortar had been used in ancient times by the Greek empires and the likes. And that type of architecture was also taken to the US, to the UK and the likes, because of, back in the day, not necessarily like colonialism, but the empires that used to be there at the time, right? And that's now the thing you're seeing right now, even in Kenya, because we are now, I guess we're not competing, but we're taking that kind of traditional sense, because that is what was now brought to Kenya and to Africa through our colonialists, right? And that is now what we're calling our tradition. But now when you go now to the West, they're now building with timber. They're building a lot more with Adobe. They're building a lot more with techniques that are inherently African vernacular. So they've finished what we are doing now. They finished. So it's like, when you say there's nothing new under the sun. So now they're using core indigenous ways of building their structures now, obviously by modernizing them a little bit, and that's how it is. They don't have boundary walls, they don't have this, because it's now a community type of building, right? But now in Africa, in Kenya, you come and tell someone, I want you to build your house using timber frames and doing this and this and that. They will come up so many questions that they will look at you and go like, nah, I don't think you're the right person for me. Because you see now, for them, they're looking at things like security, safety, and all these things, but they're proven that these techniques are secure, they're safe.
Is that something you experience with clients personally for you? Like, do you try to, when you meet with clients as a culture-centered artist or a lover of traditional or vernacular architecture, I would imagine that you'd want to influence this on your clients because probably, you know, this will work out better than if we did it in a maybe way modern way. Do you find yourself in these situations where you're trying? How do you deal with this? How do you sell the concept of culture-centered design at the end of it?
It's like anything. Selling is a skill that you either have or you don't, or you can learn. And you're dealing with people who have also understood the traditional way of doing things, right? I myself growing up, I knew that the traditional way of doing things is the right way of doing things. When I started my career, the traditional way of doing things is, you know, and that's conventional architecture, right? So conventionally, using standard materials because the costs are there. You know, the locations for those materials where they come from are known. So you're not reinventing the wheel through conventional architecture. But by now going to the realm of sustainability, culture-centered design, and to that point where it's almost in the unknown, where you're now bringing different techniques, I would say I found myself lucky somehow to find people who are very open to certain things here and there, right? So that's why I've had my own signature in some of these projects that I've done, because they can see my work previously, or they've been referred to me by someone who have done the work for them, and they can see, you know, so they're like, okay, we want to modernize our tradition, so what can we do? So because I've put myself in that situation of trying to understand culture, community, traditional ways of building, vernacular ways of building, and seeing how they can actually be modernized or interchangeably connected, is something that I can say maybe even last year and this year, I found myself kind of lucky to find people who are open to the idea. And it's just about having, the same way we're having this conversation, is how you have the conversation with them. So you're not speaking down on them or telling them or directing them or doing this. You're literally simply just having a conversation of what would you like. Getting your client's brief has to be very simple. So what's the size of your house? What would you like? This and this and this. And then now I come and ask you, so what type of materials are you looking at? So when you tell me, oh, on my land, I already have sand, I have all this, I have this. I'm like, that's brilliant, because we don't have to buy sand anywhere. If you have within your radius of maybe 2 kilometers, 10 kilometers, whatever it is, you know where to get stone, you know where to get this, you know where to get, you know. So it makes it easier for such a project to be embedded within that locality in terms of whether we're using vernacular design system or even the traditional design systems, but I will still bring in some of my signature kidogo just so that it elevates even my practice. It's not just about putting brick on brick. It's about creating a system or putting a system that actually elevates local culture. So that's what I really want to do, or I'm in the process of elevating local culture and local communities, and that's why I'm looking for projects out of Nairobi, within different areas. So I need to understand, I need to learn this, right? You can't, and I think to go back to something I said before I finish that statement, you cannot go to a specific place or of a specific people and tell them how to do things without you understanding who they really are first. So that's why through this whole culture-centered design system, I had to start to learn to understand people of different cultures and different communities before I come in with my own opinion. Because my opinion may be right, but it may be wrong to them. You know, or it may be wrong to them. No, it may be right to them, but wrong to me. So I need to be able to understand, this is how Wangoi lives her life. This is how Wangoi's community does things. And by simply understanding how you live your life and how you do your things as a community, then I can come in not to overshadow, but to complement. So that's where culture-centered design is supposed to. It's supposed to sit in a point of complementing, as opposed to being in loggerheads.
You know, as you're speaking, I'm just thinking of something I saw on the internet recently, and it was so mind-blowing. Can you imagine? I came across this page of it's in the West. I can't remember which country this was. Probably LA. I'm not so sure, but it's someone who's selling African grass thatched roof as gazebos, and it's like a full blown company.
Yeah.
And people are so fascinated by it, and I'm like, oh my god! Back at home, guys don't want to be associated with this, but out there, they have the modern house, they have a pool outside, but people want this grass-thatched gazebo.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, why are we always missing, okay, you talked about like the mind shift where we've gotten to, over time, thinking that this is the right way, and probably even living our ways, which is very common in most of our dressing, food, so many things. And it just made me remember that company that I came across. And as we're having this conversation in regards to the mind shift, it takes me back to what we were saying earlier, that children need to be part of this conversation. Because I am just thinking right now, if there are kids in school being taught about what we are talking about, they are definitely going to learn. I feel like kids extend their knowledge to their parents. Like you can't dispute that. Like they'll come from school and tell you, oh, someone said this and this, and it will pique your interest. And I'm looking at a future where, if we can have more of this education conversations, I'm looking at a future that is, the architecture is also, you get into Nairobi city and you can feel your culture there. Not necessarily as a Kikuyu and seeing Kikuyu items only, but all of us as Kenyans somehow.
What you're talking about is the respect of different cultural communities or different communities in harmony. And the beauty, the reason why I talked about children, right, is because kids have a very innate way of dealing with one another that has nothing to do with tribe, but has everything to do with understanding of who you are. So it's not tribalist, it's not colorist, it's not racist or whatever it is. It's all about the understanding of this is what this person does, and I need to respect that, or they need to respect me, and blah, blah. Obviously, there's going to be a tussle there and here and there, as humans generally do, but kids have a very innate way of dealing with conflict, right? There is a book that I referenced in my thesis. I forget it's a set of books that guide you on how to do certain things. But there's a lady who I referenced. She's called Room, RHUMM. Wow. She spoke and she said that for you to build something, and because this is directly towards a school, for you to build a structure that you want grown-ups to live in, you have to first make sure that kids will be comfortable living in that space as well.
Oh, this is nice, because it's just made me remember something that I read, that most of African architecture was, what is it called, accessible. The grandmother could walk into the house, the child could crawl into the house, like everybody, it's inclusive to everyone. And I just thought to myself how these days accessibility is a key conversation. People are complaining, oh, my wheelchair can't pass through, oh, the old people don't feel comfortable in the towns, it's inaccessible. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, we built accessible spaces inherently, like it's inherent. We knew that everybody needs to access this. And back to the conversation about grown-ups, about kids, it makes me think about culture once again. And it makes me wonder, Africans, we had age sets. We had when you go to Nigeria, they have different types of foods from Kenya, from wherever. When you go to Lamu, the Swahili food is very different from the Kikuyu food or Maasai food. When you look at age sets, the different people were grouped according to different, ages. And I just wonder, is that something that we do think about as designers, as architects, when you're designing? Do we think about things like age when you're designing the school? Does the element of age influence the way you design the space? And how does it do that? Because I'm curious to know that.
So the design of the school that I was doing was an elementary school, right? But there had to be, in part of my theory and in the design, the, what's it called? The opportunity for growth. Elementary school, and you're talking about age now, is the first 4 years of school, right?
Yeah.
That's elementary. But then now when you move up towards 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the Kenyan system, that goes now into the larger primary education system.